Audrey and Rusty. And now for our invocation, Bill Evans.
Thank you, Louisa. Thinking about the 4th of July, think about all the freedoms that we enjoy. Our pastor yesterday said there's a difference between freedom and independence. You know, independence is what we declare. Freedom has to be earned. And I think today we've forgotten a lot about that. But there's a prayer I want to read today from a fellow by the name of Sir Francis Drake. He was the second man to navigate the globe. So if you will join me in this prayer about your heads. Disturb us, Lord, when we are too pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true because we dream too little, when we arrive safely because we sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us when the abundance of things we possess, we have lost our thirst for the waters of life. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wilder seas, where storms will show your mastery, where losing sight of land we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizons of our hopes and to push back the future in strength, courage, hope, and love. This we ask in the name of our captain, who is Jesus Christ. Amen.
And now for our distinguished guest, John.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome Beaver Hardy, if you would please stand up, from Columbia East. And then Mr. Glenn Matthews, if our rotators with guests would please stand up and introduce their guests. Mr. Matthews, I'm going to walk the microphone around to you. Any guests? Welcome, Mr. Hardy.
Thank you both very much. And now for health and happiness, Cynthia Giles.
Louisa and I are the exact same height. It's so nice. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you guys had a good Independence Day holiday. The health and happiness updates I have so far are past district governor and past president Ann Walker has been selected as one of the 25 women of influence in the Midlands. I think we can all agree that she's well deserving of that. The only other thing I was told about was Jonathan Jeffcoat, who just gave our invocation. He is excited to announce that he will be welcoming baby number 2 in December, a little girl. So he's going to have a boy and a girl. I'm very excited to announce and to celebrate with all of you the women's U.S. soccer team winning the World Cup, the second consecutive World Cup, 4 total for them, so equal pay, hashtag. One of the things that I wanted to discuss with you guys this week is remembering, just because we have some mischievous sides to us or we have a little bit of flaws doesn't mean that you have to stop and not move forward. We are all leaders in this group, and history will remember the positive things and not the negative things. For example, last week we celebrated our 243rd birthday as a country. To put it vaguely, all the history buffs in the room, I know there's a lot of other stuff that goes on with that, but for the sake of simplicity, we celebrated our 243rd birthday from independence from the British and their taxation. We praise our founding fathers with forward thinking and courage, and they fought and did what was right, but they were human all the same, and they had their own flaws. For example, John Hancock's name has become synonymous with signatures, not because he was the first to sign, but because his signature takes up a whole 6 square inches on a document that holds 56 total signatures. That is the colonial equivalent of having a big old truck, in my opinion. Back in his day, he was more well known for his smuggling, sneaking in products like tea, glass, and paper to avoid British taxes. And when the British put a 500-pound bounty on his head, he was insulted at the price being too low. We don't remember any of that though, right? Benjamin Franklin, known for being America's inventor, was very extra before it became a social media hashtag. He wanted to rearrange the English alphabet by eliminating the letters C, J, Q, W, X, and Y, declaring them very redundant. I wonder what my mom would have named me if he would have been successful. He also advocated for the turkey to be the nation's official bird. He once dissed the bald eagle, calling it a bird of bad moral character. It makes you wonder what happened to him. And an eagle. I'm not sure. But it doesn't stop there. His unique perspective extended to his personal hygiene. The man often opted for what he dubbed an air bath over cold water. He would personally walk around nude in his quarters for half an hour each morning, reading and writing, and all the wives in the audience can agree with me when I say what. I wonder if his wife made him sit on a certain chair and wouldn't let anybody else go over it. It's something that Benjamin Franklin and George Washington had in common were their egos. George Washington was so vain he spent hours curling and styling his hair. That famous do was not a wig. This surprised me, honestly. But it is his own hair that he sat and styled, and he powdered it. I wonder if he knew it would be placed on the dollar bill. One thing he was wrong about was the Constitution. Washington was unsure it would have such a lasting impact. Walking with a friend just before the convention came to a close in 1787, he said, "I do not expect the Constitution to last more than 20 years. And yet it has lasted as long as his iconic wooden dentures that can be found atop the $1 bill at the National Museum of Dentistry." So, take my heed and remember, history will remember the positive things and not the negative things. So if you're holding yourself back because of skeletons in your closet, you might be the best president we've ever had.
Thank you, Cynthia. And I'm so glad to find somebody else in my same height. It's wonderful. Thank you very much, Cynthia. That was informative and certainly entertaining. Okay, just a few announcements. First, the cart bucket. Everybody remember? They're on your table. Don't forget them. And membership committee. Don't forget we have a short meeting right after this meeting. We'll probably meet at one of the tables off to the side. Board members, I know I'm late sending out the schedule. It's coming, I promise. I had to get the dates confirmed with Cal Sewell because we will be meeting here after our regular meetings. But I do know the first meeting, board meeting, will be July 29th, right here, right after our meeting. And I'll send you the schedule this week. Purging of the files. Thanks to Debbie McDonald and Annie Wilson and Della from Capital Consultants, we have moved almost 80 boxes of rotary records from the Boy Scout office to Capital Consultants. Now, they're going to keep some of them for a few weeks while we go through them and purge. And Roger Drew is the one in charge, graciously has agreed to do that, but he needs some help. So he's going to be meeting there at Capital Consultants Tuesdays and Wednesdays, this week and next week. Correct, Roger? He'd love to have help. You don't have to be someone of his caliber. I think I'm going to help, and I know nothing about purging files, but he's going to train us. But we just need some people to help. So after this meeting, if you will speak to Roger, I know he'll be delighted to talk to you. Okay. And now, Blake, where are you? Blake Buchanan. Our Rotary Night at Firefly.
Thanks, President Louisa. So I'll do a quick raise of hands. Who came to Rotary Night at the ballpark last year? Just curious. All right. And I've heard, thank you, and I've heard from several people that you had a good time. So it's we're doing it again this year. The Fireflies are offering up another Rotary Night at Sager Park. You've seen it in Cynthia puts in all of the emails. So you've seen the flyer on there, and you can click on it to buy the tickets. I didn't bring the stuff today, but obviously if you want to do it, you can just email me or grab me while you're here, and I'll jot your name down and I'll take care of it. It's going to be on Friday, July 26th. So that's also a little bit different night there. You have any superhero fans? And I have to say Marvel, sorry. Marvel superhero fans specifically. Marvel's sponsoring that night for us, and therefore we're going to give away a bobblehead of the Black Panther. So that's going to be for the first, I think, at least 1,000, maybe a little more. I don't have my numbers exactly on that one. But if you go there early, you'll get one of those as well. So that is on Friday, July the 26th at 7 o'clock. Gates open at 6. And the tickets are $9 for the ticket, $5 for the food voucher, so $14. Not a bad deal. We'll all be on the first base side like we were last time. And I know there's a couple other clubs that sell a lot more than us, and I know that we can. So I'm just encouraging you on that Friday night, go ahead and start planning. And if you want the tickets, you want to know how, or tell me how many you want, I'll just jot it down and I'll get with you to take care of that, okay? Thank you.
We had a great time last year, so I'm going to encourage everybody to come this year, and let's have an even better showing. And now, back to the incomparable Cynthia Giles about a new Rotary project. It has to do with literacy. She's going to tell you more.
I want to thank all of you for all of your kind words and everything over the last few weeks. The last time we met, I was very graciously thanked by Louisa with the Paul Harris Fellow, and I could not believe how just blessed I am. And I would really, truly like to thank Carrie Powers for inviting me to Rotary and making me a Rotarian. I love this club and I love what we do, and I love Rotary's mission statement. I put in a lot of time to Rotary, but I feel like it is worth it. Another thing that I've decided to start doing for the club, and I hope you guys will join me, is called Together We Read. It is with Save the Children, and what it does is it focuses on getting books and education to low-income parents in our community, so that way children in low-income households can be given an equal opportunity. I know most of you don't actually know a lot about me, but I grew up in Los Angeles, California. My mom was a single parent who had me when she was 19, and I was raised very poor. The only escape I got was books, and we weren't allowed to watch TV. I was given a book. When I got in trouble, go read. When my mom needed to bond with me, we sat and read a book, and she would find a certain book that had a moral behind it, and that was the whole entire point of reading together, and it is what helped make me a person strong enough to get myself out of that situation. So I personally feel very strongly about this organization and this program, and I hope that you guys will help me. I'm looking at this point in time for anybody that is interested in joining me while we start a committee for this. I promise I will make it as simple as possible. I really think that we can do this as a social media campaign, as well as just asking anyone here that has a waiting room or an office where parents bring in young children, that you allow us to put literature and books in your offices. And then those of you that are interested in helping me on social media, getting the word out about this, I think that we can completely dominate this and win this. Well, there's nothing to win, but I think that we can get this out there and get this to be a very successful program for our club. So if you're interested, please meet me after the club or give me an email. I'm sure you guys all know how to get hold of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. I love your commitment and your enthusiasm, and I know it's going to be a big success. So anybody that's interested, please see her afterwards or email her. And now we've got, believe it or not, a few extra minutes. So I wanted to give our speaker and introduce her a chance to eat their lunch and you too. So just visit each other for about 5 minutes and I'll get back to you. Thanks.
So
program, and we've got a great one today. And to introduce our speaker is Beth Arick, our favorite member, Beth Arick.
I'm going to raise this just a little, and then I think Sara will probably raise it a little bit more. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Sara Fawcett, who is with the United Way of the Midlands. I've gotten to know Sara since she joined the United Way of the Midlands because of my service as CEO of the Cooperative Ministry here in the Midlands. And Cooperative Ministry is just one of the numerous nonprofit partner agencies that are a member of United Way of the Midlands, where we partner to receive services to help the less fortunate of those that live here in the Midlands. So I'm really excited to hear Sara speak, and I know that you'll enjoy what she has to say and what she has to offer also. But before she gets started, let me tell you a little bit about her. Sara has served as President and Chief Executive Officer of the United Way of the Midlands in Columbia, South Carolina since June of 2017. Before joining the team at United Way, Sara served as Vice President of Human Resources for Eden's Realty for more than 12 years. In her role, Sara provided executive HR leadership to one of the largest privately held commercial real estate development companies in the United States, supporting more than 200 employees in 10 offices nationally. During her time there, she led recruiting and onboarding processes as the company grew by 51% over 10 years. She began her career with Wachovia Bank, now Wells Fargo, where she spent 14 years. She served in a variety of banking and human resources roles, including in the corporate banking, insurance, and wealth management divisions of the company. Sara was a longtime volunteer and supporter of the United Way of the Midlands, having volunteered her time and expertise on both the resource development and the community impact arms of the organization. Her roles have included a membership on the board of directors, co-chair of the campaign committee, chair of the community impact committee, and chair of the financial sustainability committee. During her time as co-chair of the campaign committee, she co-led a team of 30 volunteers responsible for raising $22 million over 2 years. That's to be commended. As chair of the Community Impact Committee, she led a team of 25 volunteers with oversight of $4 million in community investment and $2 million in grants and community services. Sara holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. She has 3 children, Maddie, Ben, and John. Also, Sara is one of the 25 women of influence for 2019. So help me welcome Sara Fawcett.
Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here. I have heard a lot about your club. I've had a chance to speak to some Rotaries over the last 2 years, none as large or intimidating as this one, but it's great to see a lot of friends out there today, so thank you very much. Louisa, thank you for inviting me. Mason, I really appreciate it. It is an honor to be here, especially when I found out that I'm sharing the podium with people like John McCain and Barbara Bush and others, and that really makes me true. So, all right, can you hear me better now?
Much better.
Okay, it's an honor to be here, and I really, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. As my friend Beth, and I'm privileged to work with you as well. Thank you for your partnership. As Beth had said, up until 2 years ago, I worked for a company that you may know of, Eden's. It used to be called Eden's and Avant. And it was one of the most, and it still is, one of the most successful retail commercial real estate development companies in the country. They develop grocery-anchored strip shopping centers up and down the East Coast. And you might think that in the age of online shopping that a company making major investments in brick and mortar retail would not be a smart investment. But when you think about it in terms of dollars spent, Retail purchases online make up, any guesses about what percentage retail purchases make up of total purchasing? Percentage guess? 52%? Less than 10. So online spending for retail purchases is less than 10% of all spending on retail. Now, the difference is that retail online purchases are growing by double digits. So I don't think that less than 10% is going to stay there very long. So as a commercial real estate development company, Edens knew that they couldn't just put up a nice looking center on a great corner and fill it with tenants. They had to do more. They had to, in order to be successful, Edens had to learn about the shopper themselves. They had to learn about what does she, and we did say she, what does she like? What does she dislike? What makes her feel safe? Where else does she spend her money? How does she spend her time? What are her priorities in life? And by knowing what those characteristics were, combined with her online and offline buying patterns, we were able to use, or Edens was able to use this technology and research and demographics and partnerships with other retailers to truly understand the shopper and put together a mix of tenants that would enable that shopper to come onto our shopping centers, to spend more hours at the shopping center per week. And for those of you with credit cards know that the longer that you spend at a shopping center, the more dollars you spend. And the more dollars that shoppers would spend on our properties, the more we could charge in rent. So it wasn't quite all altruistic, but it was taking this technology and overlaying it with demographic information and figuring out who's coming on to Edens centers, who is there, and how do we get them to spend more time there. And Edens was and still is very successful at this. Their shopping centers in the urban markets where they serve are among the highest in terms of per dollar square foot sales and in terms of the traffic in and out of the center. So when I took my first job in nonprofit 2 years ago, it was very interesting to find out that in my new industry we were facing the same questions and similar shifts in the relationship between our organization and our donors. Just like Edens, nonprofits today can't just have a great mission, an admirable board of directors, a pristine 990, all those types of things, and wait for the donors to come to us. The relationship between the donor and nonprofits has fundamentally changed. And it is through the same kind of demographic shifts and technological advancement that we need to begin building a different relationship with our donors. So where are we today? Giving USA, which is the Giving USA Foundation, is really kind of the benchmark in terms of reporting on charity every year. Americans gave over $400 billion to charity in 2018. It actually was down a little bit from the previous year, about 3%. But overall, that is a significant amount of money, which then when you turn that money around, it generates about $900 billion in economic activity, in economic contribution. So we should all be proud of that, both as donors and as nonprofits. But we're in a very fascinating transition right now, I think, as both donors and nonprofits. In the nonprofit world, technology, for better or for worse, has been a secondary consideration. We have not been out at the forefront the way that some other organizations have been. You think about Google, you think about Amazon, you think about Facebook. All of those companies have had technologies out there for 2 decades that most of your businesses began to tap into about 10 years ago, and the nonprofit world is now catching up. Just as a side note, one of the biggest partners that Edens had and still has in terms of determining the shopper profile is relationships with credit card companies and relationships with retailers. If you don't know this already, when you go into Target or you go into Walmart or you go into any big box store, they know what you're doing and they know where you are. They know what shelves you're stopping in front of. They know how long you're stopping there. Just to make it even a little creepier, this is a side note, I took my children to LA to visit my mother and some family over Christmas. We were down at the Port of Los Angeles touring the battleship Iowa, and a berth or 2 down, there was a Princess Cruise Line ship in port. We finish our tour of the Iowa, we go into the parking lot, I fire up my phone to post some pictures to Facebook. Guess what popped up? An ad for Princess Cruise Lines. I mean, they knew where I was, and I was not even on Wi-Fi. So that is the world that we are in today. Don't worry, United Way is not going to start doing that. That's not where this is going. But there's no doubt, one thing that's not changing is that a donor needs to feel a connection to the organizations that they donate to. I hope that when you make your donations, your charitable giving, that you are out there connecting with organizations that speak to you. Because the relationship between the donor and the nonprofit can no longer be a once-a-year transaction. Now, we talked about how online purchasing was less than 10% of all retail purchasing in terms of dollar value. Any guesses as to what percentage online giving is in terms of total giving in the US?
2%.
2%, 20? About 8%. About 8%. And that's for online campaigns only. Okay. So online giving, pure from start to finish online giving is still less than 10%, just like on the retail side. But it's growing by double digits. In 2017, online giving grew 12%. I have not yet seen the figures for 2018, but it would not surprise me if it'll come in at or about another 12%. And then you pile on top of all this the ease by which Google and Facebook and all these other places can find you, as well as what you can find out about the nonprofits online. You can Google anything that you want and come up with news, whether that's fake or real news, about an organization with just a couple of clicks of a mouse. There's one other factor that's facing all of us as nonprofits and all of us as employers as well, and that is the demographic shifts that are occurring right now. Baby boomers and millennials are now about at parity in terms of the pure numbers of them in the population. With nature taking its course, we're not far away though from the population base being skewed towards millennials. In 2018, the average donor age was 62 years old. In 2017, the average age was 64. So we're already starting to see that average age of donor scoot down. And that, again, I wouldn't be surprised over the next 10 years that continues to scoot down a year or two every year. However, baby boomers on average give $2,000 a year to charity. Millennials give about $1,000 per year. And baby boomers make up almost half of all charitable giving. Millennials make up about 15%. So you've got a lot of generational differences between these two groups. One more that I would point out is that baby boomers tend to give to organizations that they feel good about, that they feel are well run, have a good mission, are solid and stable. Millennials give to a cause. And that cause may or may not be a nonprofit. How many of you have made a donation to a GoFundMe account? Okay, so a handful of people. Do you know that when you give to a GoFundMe account, you are not contributing to a nonprofit? You're giving to a cause. Whether that's somebody's hospitalization charges, whether that is somebody's scholarship or paying for them to go to college, whether that be because they want to buy a new car, whatever it is, you're giving to a cause. So these two generations that we have to address could not be more different. They both need to be, we need to be able to reach both of them. We need to be able to find out what they like, what they dislike. We need to understand more about what it is that appeals to them so that we can, when you're talking about the millennial who gives to causes, we need to find out what is that cause that they're interested in. And then on the baby boomer side, the more that I know, even though that baby boomer may still give to a nonprofit because they know that it's good and solid and well-run and good financials and does good in the community, they still, the more that we know about that constituency as well, the better we can address them also. So again, just like we did in retail real estate, we need to get to know those donors better. What do they like to do? What are they passionate about? Where else do they donate money? Where do they volunteer their time? What are their priorities? What are the things that are taking priority in their life? Is it their children? Is it their church? Is it their extended family? Is it something else in the community? What kind of issues do they share information about? A lot of times, we reveal what we are interested in by what we share on social media. And I think everybody knows that once you put it out on social media, you can't take it down. It is basically publicly available at that point. And other things to know, where do they work? And more importantly, why do they work there? All of these things can help put together a picture of our donors and the causes that are important to them so that we can present ourselves as a way to advance those causes. Now, this is kind of typically the way that you would approach a major donor, right? You know, you get to know them and get to know what they're interested in, present yourself as a way for them to fulfill those desires. However, when you have a database of several thousand donors, it's very difficult to go out and visit each one and build that relationship. But again, we have the same tools available that other companies do, and it's a question of being able to harness that technology and that data to be able to utilize the technology, the research, the demographics, and close partnerships with other organizations to truly understand our donor. Because that way, we can present our work in a way that will appeal to that donor, that will show the stories of our work, the influence that we have in the communities, and the difference that we're making. Hopefully in a way that they'll then want to turn around and share that with their social networks as well. So what does this look like specifically? That's the theory. So what does it look like specifically? I can only speak from the United Way perspective, but the direction that we're headed is that the workplace campaign is still a United Way across the board, not just in the Midlands, but the relationship that we have with workplace and our workplace campaigns are still our largest source of revenue. It's 90% of our revenue comes from those workplace relationships. And technology is not going to change that. So for those of you that work for companies that have a United Way campaign, technology is not going to take the place of that. We're still going to ask. But, so you're not off the hook. But the way that you were asked, I think you're going to see that change somewhat over the next couple of years. United Way Worldwide, which is the umbrella organization for the 1,800 United Ways around the world, United Way Worldwide has partnered with Salesforce.com, which is the #1 CRM technology in the country. Salesforce and United Way Worldwide have developed a suite of tools specifically for nonprofits that will help us understand our donors better, primarily through digital means. And more tools are being made available, such as psychographic and demographic overlays, are also there in order to identify, segment, and better understand our donors. We then are going to take all that information and develop messages that are going to be hopefully specific to donors, whether that be workplace donors or whether that be individual donors. United Way of the Midlands is the first United Way in the state of South Carolina that is going to start to use this technology. We are going to pilot our first campaign, is what they're calling it, but our first initiative with a portion of our donor database this fall. The goal is for us to see more information about our donors, get them to respond back to us digitally, so that we can then take that information and again present causes that are relevant to them. So what does it mean for the message? So there's a couple of things, and I want to show how you have to not only segment your donors and figure out what appeals to them, but then how do you change your message? You know, the message for at least United Way, and probably for most nonprofits here, has been, you know, here we are, we're the United Way, we do all this great work in the community, look at these great results we have, all these people that we've impacted and lives that we've changed. Great message. But that is such a broad message that is not going to appeal to the up-and-coming donor base. But what could it look like? Let me give you a couple of brief examples, just 3 brief examples with the initiatives that United Way that are most significant for us right now. United Way we own and manage 2 adult free dental clinics, 2 free children's dental clinics, and an adult eye clinic in Richland and Lexington counties. We serve about 6,000 people. We have about 6,000 appointments per year between all those clinics, and we have been able to reduce hospital emergency room costs at all of the major hospitals for dental-related emergency room visits, anywhere from 15 to 50% over the last 3 years. Great accomplishment. Saves everybody money. But here's what we feel the message needs to be as we get to know our donors better, and how do we make this something that's appealing to donors? So an example could be that Well Partners serves a segment of the population with access to a critical and specific type of health care that everybody else in this room either has direct access to or is insured for, and that's dental insurance. Well Partners is there to serve people that fall in the gap. Working families that don't qualify for Medicaid and either don't have access to or cannot afford dental insurance. If your health starts in your mouth, and if good dental hygiene is key to staving off critical medical issues, ongoing medical issues such as heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, this is a way to serve that population of people that go unnoticed and unserved. So there's a change in the message there. Another example would be the Midlands Reading Consortium, which is our tutoring program in schools. And by the way, I want to commend you, Cynthia, on your efforts with the books and collecting books. It makes a huge difference having access to books. So congratulations, and I wish you a lot of goodwill for that program. So please contribute. So Midlands Reading Consortium, we tutor 500 students across 22 schools all across the Midlands in all of our school districts. We engage community volunteers just like you to read to those students 30 minutes a week, and it has increased reading scores in schools and increased desire for reading by about 90% as reported by teachers. Great message, great result. Again, as we get to know donors better, this is more what the message would be. Were you that student in school, that kid in school, who was just having a hard time getting it? You tried and you tried, but you weren't getting it. And you were that kid that fell in the gap because you didn't need the reading intervention. You didn't have to go to the reading room. And the teacher spent a lot of time with the kids that were doing really well. But you were kind of there, and every year you felt like you slipped back just a little bit more and had to struggle just a little bit more. If you weren't that kid, I bet you know who the kid was in your class who was that person. Well, the Midlands Reading Consortium addresses those kids that are on the bubble. That kid that is almost there in terms of being able to read on grade level, but they need that extra boost to develop that love of reading. They come from a home that doesn't have a lot of books in the home, where the parent does not sit and read with them. We want to provide books for them in their home. We want to provide a personal library so that a parent can sit down with them because they have something to read. That parent can sit down with them. We want to train that parent to understand that the number of words that your child is exposed to in the very early years of elementary school has a huge difference in their performance and their ability to graduate from high school. So if you were that kid, or you knew who that kid was, then Midlands Reading Consortium is something we want to talk to you more about. Again, an example of how you take a message once you know more about a donor. The last example that I would give is a new initiative of United Way called Resilient Richland. And this is a program that is designed to create a trauma-informed community so that we can approach childhood trauma in a way that will set the students up for greater success later in life. Great message, good outcomes, all that good stuff. The message that may resonate more if we know a donor more personally is this. Do you know what an adverse childhood experience is? Adverse childhood experiences are anything traumatic that happens to a child under the age of 18. There are 10 very common ACEs. They include abuse in the home, whether that's substance abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. It could be divorce, it could be death of a parent, incarceration of a parent, loss of a home, frequent unstable housing situations. And we've discovered that in Richland County alone, 67% of us have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. Any guess as to what the most common one is?
Divorce.
Divorce, yeah, that's the most common one. Excuse me. And an adverse childhood experience, so 67% of people in Richland County have experienced one ACE. 17% have experienced 4 or more. And the more childhood trauma that you have, the more level of cortisol you have in your body, which is that stress hormone that just kind of keeps you on edge all the time. And when you're on edge all the time in a developing body, then your educational outcomes, health outcomes, and self-sufficiency outcomes are greatly decreased. But if we can address trauma early on, if we can look at a child in school and say, not so much, what's wrong with you when they're acting out, but look at them and say, what's happened to you? Doesn't excuse behavior, don't get me wrong on that. Behavior has to be addressed and it has to be taken care of in the moment. But to look at them and say, what happened to them? And to be able to address that trauma in a way that doesn't make it worse, then you have set that child up for success. If you can do education in the home and work with the parents to help them recognize potential trauma and alleviate it, you can make a positive change in someone's life that will follow them for the rest of their life in terms of education, health, and self-sufficiency. So that is all how, it not only is how do we get to know the donor better, but then how do you take your mission and alter the message. Again, this is something that every business represented in this room either has already done or is in the process of doing, is getting to know your customer, getting to know your client better. We are going to get to know our donors better. We understand that this is going to take time, and we understand that we want to maintain the assets that we have. But it's a change that's coming, and I'm really excited to be a part of it, and I'm excited to be able to share it with you today. For those of you that support United Way, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for all your support for all of the nonprofits that are represented in your club today. It's an honor to be here, and if there's time, I'm happy to take some questions. Yes? Yes, sir.
Under the huge new federal tax bill, the middle class can no longer take charitable deductions. Is that how worrisome is that to you all?
We're not sure what the effect is going to be yet. We were advised to expect about a 5% decline in contributions that could be traced back to the change in the tax law. As far as United Way is concerned, it's too early for me to say whether or not that was any kind of an effect, because our campaign year is July 1 through June 30th, so it kind of fell in the middle of the year. Giving USA reported a 3% drop in giving, but again, it's hard to know yet if that's related to the tax law. I think 2 to 3 years from now we'll know. And by the way, we are also still advocating for a universal deduction, which is an above-the-line deduction for any charitable donation, no matter who gives it, no matter what your tax bracket is. So that bill has been reintroduced in both. It was introduced in 17, but never went anywhere. It's been reintroduced both in the House and in the Senate. And if you have a chance to look into either of those bills and see if it's something you agree with, and if it is, I would strongly ask that you advocate for it, because we believe that deductibility should be available to everybody, no matter what. And that's what a universal deduction would do. So,
Sarah, thank you for being here. I would like to know your thoughts on the change from Scanning to Dominion and how that may be impacting what you guys are trying to do in the neighborhood.
Well, it's a great question. And I will say that Dominion has been very gracious in terms of committing to a United Way campaign again for this year. SCANA was one of our largest campaigns, both in terms of dollars, in terms of leadership, and in terms of volunteer support. They've been very gracious in terms of committing to United Way campaign again for this year, at the same level of support that they did before, same level of corporate support. You know, time will tell. Dominion has a different relationship with United Way in Richmond. Dominion is fortunate, I don't think that they know it, that not only are they now affiliated with us, but the Richmond United Way and the Salt Lake City United Way, which is where Dominion bought a significant gas distribution company a few years ago. It's one of the best in the country. So I like to see that turn around. The good news is that the folks that have retired, we're working on retaining them as individual donors. And you know, if you think about it, it's a change in leadership. When you look at the change at Dominion, look at the change at Prisma Health, it's definitely a change in leadership across the board. We're fortunate that we haven't had wholesale job loss You know, it's not where a company has come in and moved operations out. You know, the hospital is still serving people and will hopefully serve more people with more efficiency. Dominion is still supplying energy to every single one of us, and that's not going to change. So I think while the loss of leadership is tough, I have confidence in the community that it will turn back around. Just side note, I worked for Wachovia years ago when Wachovia bought SCN, South Carolina National Bank, and I was 12 at the time. And I remember, I was in Winston-Salem at that point, not Columbia, but I remember that Columbia was going through kind of a sea change in leadership at that point too. And you know what, we figured it out. And I have all confidence that that's going to happen here again. Yes, sir.
My involvement with the United Way over the years has been one that it was really a community chest or a clearinghouse for other organizations who didn't have the resources, didn't want to spend the money to make their ratios look bad, to reach out to the community. They applied with you. Y'all became somewhat of a supporter of most of the charities. You've got Central Carolina Community Debt Foundation. You've got participation in the internet. Is there not a paradigm shift that's going to need to occur with y'all, because you're basically just another charitable organization? If Sister Care or any of these other smaller organizations like, say, Salvation Army have depended on y'all for years, it seems like they have the ability to go directly to the web to develop, and that kind of changes how they interact with you. I'm just questioning whether or not y'all are looking at that future of United Way and how that all plays out.
Sure. So 2 comments on that. One is that we hope that nonprofits would still, that our partner nonprofit agencies would still look at that workplace relationship where we typically do a payroll deduction contribution, that they would still look at that as an asset, because it's easier for somebody, typically somebody can afford to give $10 a pay period or $5 a pay period and be a $250 donor throughout the year, as opposed to being able to write one check for $100 one time that year. So I hope that's still an asset to our partner agencies.
Well, let me piggyback the question, because most of the millennials don't even have a checkbook. They are all dealing with direct online interaction.
And we'll take the direct debit from their credit or debit card, and we're happy to do that. So, I mean, but you're right, you're right. And so in that relationship, that's part of that changing relationship with the donor. How do they want to give? Payroll deduction is still the best way for somebody to be able to give the most that they can. And so that's what we're hoping to still be able to capitalize on. The other thing that I would say is that the strength that United Way today brings to the table is that we convene the right groups of people together to try to solve a problem. For example, the Allen Benedict evacuation. We partnered with Salvation Army and the Richland Library, as well as the Columbia Housing Authority, to make sure that we got the extra moving expenses that those people could not cover themselves covered. Bringing people together. Well Partners is a great example. All 3 hospital systems, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Sisters of Charity, gosh, I could name a couple of others, all convened to put Well Partners together. That wasn't just United Way going out there and saying, you know, here it is. We have the school systems, Children's Trust, the Nord Foundation, Sisters of Charity, Community Foundation, working with us on Resilient Richland. So I think that convening aspect where we can take the group together and we're all stronger and more effective together is really the asset that we also still have. And I think I'm probably, I don't want to make everybody like get back to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. That was so interesting, informative, and you made me think about things I never even thought I'd have to be thinking about. But it's all good information. I'm going to be real careful what I like on Facebook from now on, to be sure. But I have this for you. It is a letter opener to thank you for your time with us. And when you open up all of your fan mail that's sure to come, I hope you'll think of us. Thank you. Okay. Next week, President-elect Mason.
Yeah.
So this is my first time making announcements as the president-elect. As I make these announcements and you read about the future speakers in Cynthia's great newsletter and on the screen, if you have a special connection with one of our presenters and you would like to introduce them, please let me know. There's nothing written in stone about who introduces, so if you see somebody that you'd like to introduce, please let me know. If you have a speaker of interest, please let me know that as well. Our speaker next week is Bob Quinn. He's the CEO of the South Carolina Research Authority.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you all for coming, and